for that is because you were on the desk for Sean. So Sean could be coaching his daughter, big tournament. She's going to be catching. You know they're going to kick butt and obviously have a lot of fun doing it. He'll be back on Monday. We'll all be back on Monday. But Obi, shout out to you for having a great day today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I learned a lot as well, so I appreciate everything.
And the love's in the chat, and that's what it's all about. Shout out to all of you. If you've got some questions, do not worry about it. We'll answer questions as well when we do the after show. But we're going to kick it off. We're going to get right over to the desk. We're going to throw you to Brendan. Do not go anywhere. We'll be back trading live 8:30 like we always do on Monday. But for now, let's get to the after show.
Take care.
Hey guys, welcome in. Let's get you caught up here on what you need to know as we head officially into the aftermarket and the after show. So welcome in. Ends up being a pretty flat day as far as the S&P 500 is concerned. That is it. That's a SPY anyway. It was very, very choppy all day long, back and forth. You can see a ton of volume at the close there to end out the week, but basically flat for the S&P to end things off. The NASDAQ negative 0.62. when all is said and done. I was just double checking the weekly numbers here. So the Dow 0.68 on the week to the upside. So we end the week positive for the Dow. The Qs going to be negative 1.5%. So negative 1.56 officially for the Qs. The SPY down just 0.27 when all is said and done. That's how, meanwhile, the S&P 500 ends the day as far as the individual sectors are concerned. Microsoft, Meta, both leading the way as far as tech is concerned. It was all about these, though. Semiconductors, we'll get into Nvidia a little bit deeper here in the next little while. But 3.25%, AMD 2.3% when all is said and done. Pretty ugly right across the board. Netflix 1.8% as well. To the downside. Eli Lilly, 1.3 higher, leading the way as far as healthcare stocks, showing a little bit of strength today. We had strength in banking names. We had strength in oil as well. As I mentioned, Oxy with its own positive catalyst, but you can see the entire group here to the upside when all is said and done. Yeah, stay tuned for next week. We'll have some retail sales data, that is, coming through on Tuesday, I believe it is. And then we also get Walmart. We also get Home Depot. So Home Depot reports in the pre-market on Tuesday morning, and then we'll get Walmart on Thursday as far as earnings are concerned. It'll be interesting to see as far as this inflation story goes, where the retailers stand, whether they've had a decent quarter, whether they're still kind of struggling as far as spending is concerned. But overall, a few things of note. As we wrap things up, we're downside for all major indexes to end the week. But as I mentioned, the Dow holds on to positive territory on the week itself. But July PPI, if you missed it this morning, coming out hotter than expected. What's that all about? We're getting more inflation worries coming back into play here. So producer prices 0.8 to the upside for July, exceeding expectations. The core number, there it is, 2.4% versus 2.3%. So, I mean, we'll, as Frank Caberna was saying earlier in the week, kind of kick things down the road as far as this inflation story goes, but the market reacting accordingly today. We were talking a little bit about early on this morning. Neil's finally with me. Everything good?
I'm good.
All right, cool.
I had to log back into a few things over here. For some reason,
I don't know. It's Sharif's fault. He just leaves and shuts everything off.
Sharif, what did you do?
Like he owns the place or something. I was mentioning, we kind of kick things down the road, as Frank was saying, to the next benchmark now, which is going to come September 13th. We get CPI for September, and then the Fed obviously after that. But, I mean, not good. Fed Chair Powell must be a little bit stressed heading into the weekend, to say the least.
I feel like he's always stressed.
Especially nowadays.
Well, when you're looking at lagging indicators, maybe you're always going to be a bit stressed out. The takeaway that I'm sort of getting from just how we ended the week, just sort of wrap up, because you do a fantastic job. It's like there's never anything left to say when Brendan gives a rundown, because quite frankly, he covers everything. Same thing with Frank, quite frankly. But I look at the Qs here right now, and I sort of think to myself, we are wrapping up a week, and on the weekly chart, because you always want to look at a bigger time frame here, and I look at a weekly on the Qs, and you made a lower high, and you have a second consecutive week down. You've seen the turnaround. We're talking about SMCI today, and the weakness that I see in Nvidia, some of the big AI names getting sold off, and positive news from the AI front is actually getting sold off on the initial spike. So all of these signs that you're getting a little bit of a pullback in the market, and then throw up the fact that we're going to have a couple of big retailers next week. Like, I mean, Walmart, which has been pretty much impervious the whole way, does that stay a buy? Is this only tech that's pulling back? Or do we see something that gets a little bit extended into some of the names that have been strong? Because you've had a lot of the staple names do really well. As I said, just to quickly throw it up here,
Walmart, guys, we can throw the rundown up there if you want.
You know, Walmart's has been breaking out, and this has been a strong stock on the weekly. Now, does it sustain this, or do we get a pullback? Because you know tech is pulling back right now. The overall sense is, does this bleed over in other places? What I'm questioning here.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if you go into some of that data that they were talking about this morning, it was energy once again that was a little bit sticky, and some of the housing reflected data that was a little bit sticky on that PPI number. But I noticed yesterday on the CPI print, if you go back to Tuesday, we got CPI. Wednesday, I don't know, it's been a long week, whenever it was, the top category that was still the highest was pets. Pets and pet related goods, still the highest as far as inflation. And then energy was right below that, and I forget some housing.
So that's hurting your pocket then.
Yeah, trust me, it ain't cheap.
I'm the only one in the crew that doesn't have a pet. So
but, I mean, obviously that's by choice. So.
I'm winning.
I mean, I'm
winning even when I'm not winning. That's no. Just, and I only say not winning because obviously I know people enjoy pets, and oddly enough, and this is a weird story, I'm going to tell it anyways. The only reason that I never really got into pets, I love other people's pets. My roommate in university, big cat person, love his cat. You know, love other people's dogs when I go to their houses. But my dad, growing up, was very much like anti-pet. And it came down to, so he grew up like old school, like in Antigua. It's like a very small island, like 10 kids, 2 parents, and a 2-bedroom home and whatnot. And like back in the day, they had goats, which were not really pets, but he was very young, and they weren't very well off. And so at some point, what ends up happening is, that, you know, the goat is food, and his job was to take care of it, getting milk from it and whatnot. But at some point, you might turn to that point. And from then on, he was just like, he never wanted a pet. And then I remember him telling me that, so I was like, yeah, so well, we never did it as kids. It's like, yeah, there was a point for him. If my daughter ever says, Daddy, I want whatever, because I never say no, then I'll probably join the party with you guys.
Of
and
course
then I'll
you
be
will.
dealing with that inflation myself.
Of course you will, Neil. Of course you will.
You can't say no.
Let's talk real quick. We're going to have Michael Noss join us here in a few minutes and get some insight into a little bit higher time frame, a little bit longer term ideas that he was looking at this week. But just from a broader sense, I mean, you know, we went into this week way back on Monday kind of thinking this was going to be a bit of a wait and see ahead of CPI. We get CPI, you know, kind of in line with expectations to a little bit downside. The market doesn't really know what to do. And then fast forward to today, this PPI comes out hotter than expected again, and here comes the selling.
Yeah, I think the market's looking for excuses to sell. At this point, it almost feels like that's sort of been the case, and that's when I look at the type of move that we had in individual names. And actually, there was a question in the chat just now, specifically talking about chip names, and so I'm going to kind of double down on that. I want to get this. Oh, this is not working. Who was it that was? Make sure I get it right. There was a question in the chat just now about the chip names. I just missed it. I have to scroll up to try and find it, but you were just sort of asking in general about some names in there. And just I'm going to pull over in Nvidia here and show you, just given what this was doing. Like, I think all that happened is you get a confirmation of the reality on the daily here for just specifically Nvidia. And this is emblematal of what's going on in the overall market when it comes to tech, because you're making lower highs on the daily chart and you're breaking down. So I always feel as if when you have a big economic number, I always want to, like, keep it simple, stupid. Like, what are we doing? Are we breaking the trend and bouncing back to the upside, or are we just continuing the gentle downward trend? And there was nothing that we got out of the reports that indicated otherwise. Like, there was no strong sense that you were going to get any kind of a reversal off of those after those reports. So it was all systems back to what was already happening, which is just the market continuing. Well, not the market, but some of the tech names continuing to roll over. And if you look at Nvidia, that's definitely the big one when it comes to these names. SMCI we're talking about as well. So it was earnings driven the last couple of days, and SMCI dragged everything down. As far as I'm concerned, when we get these inflation numbers, is there something out of there that causes us to change what was already happening with regards to the market, with earnings and the big names pulling back or continuing their rallies? And then we didn't see anything of that. There was no extreme move. I love trading around these like CPI, PPI, and inflation numbers, but I'm not sure when you're day trading they matter as much as they used to. You get flash moves out of them, which is great, but we're not really seeing things that break trend and cause a huge reversal in the market that we have to then focus on that for the next couple of days, which is fine because that means we can scalp trade them, maybe change your old long-term outlook, but then the general trend that was happening based on whatever earnings or the last event was, you can stick to that plan, which I find a lot easier because it's been short the chips since SMCI, and I'm glad that we're not having to change that too much because it was really good to end the week.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we're in that period, and we'll talk about this with Mr. Noss when he comes on, but we were talking about it this morning a little bit in the sense that, you know, it's August. A lot of people on vacation, volume's down, volatility is through the floor, if you want to talk about it from that stance. But typically a good time for maybe a pullback. If he is ready, guys, okay. Neil, you have the controls now. I do not, so you can hit the trader talk button there, and we'll talk to a trader, per se. Yeah, here comes Michael Noss, CMT over at Trade Ideas once again. It's been a pretty long day, Michael Noss. How are you? Again, good to see you.
Good. How are you? Just center myself a bit there. Yeah, it's been a wild day. I was listening to you guys in the green room there, and I was listening to the comment on Nvidia. So there's actually one thing. I've got a chart open here. I don't know if we could switch to it, but Nvidia did something pretty significant today, which was finally break down the anchored VWAP from before the gap when it came to the massive AI news. So if you remember, yeah, so there it is right there. I'm going to just draw it in to make it a little bit easier to see. But if you remember this massive gap that Nvidia had when all of a sudden they said, you know, their business was going to quintuple in value or whatever because of all this AI stuff, this anchored VWAP started to come into play significantly. And I think I mentioned it on the show. I had a nice trade in through here, but this is now the first close and a pretty definitive close below that price. So what this means is that anybody who actually got involved in basically buying Nvidia, that's what the VWAP is trying to tell us. The average market participant from this AI craze or AI news is now actually underwater in Nvidia. So for me and for the viewer that was watching, this is a pretty bad sign. So I would be watching Nvidia to see if it doesn't retake that anchored VWAP, which is just sitting right above today's high. So you can call that 420. That number keeps coming up over and over again. But you can call it 420, give or take. If it doesn't retake that soon, I think Nvidia might be in a little bit of trouble. We might be down for maybe even a gap fill or to fill at least some of that gap.
6 minutes to go, and we'll officially be there, Michael Noss. 420, I speak of. Let's shift focus a little bit here. We had a ton of strength in energy throughout the day. I know that's one group that you've had your eye on. You mentioned even this morning we were talking about USO in the sense that oil's been relatively strong versus the overall market. As far as the individual names go, I mean, same story. It was pretty impressive to see, even with the selling today.
Yeah, I've been a proud Oxy holder for a long time. The what's being coined in the technical analysis community here is the Buffett floor. $56, I think, give or take. Every time it gets to that area, Buffett's just putting in a new bid. He's buying either through selling puts or just buying the stock outright. And you're right, it's a theme that's continuing, and it's not just necessarily oil. Uranium, for example, had an amazing day today. If we go to URA, is a good proxy for uranium here. If we go to URA, that had a little bit of a breakout today. and a good closing week over a big anchored VWAP. So I'm sure I'm going to find some stuff right near a breakout here in uranium. The weekly close was pretty significant, over this downtrend line. We finally got a close there. So it seems that this energy move may not be done yet. And it may just be, I don't know if it's absolutely energy related or if it's more risk off or even rotation related. So again, I've said this quote, I'm sure here, I've said it a lot, so I'm sure I've said it here a few times, but Ralph Alcampora, who created the CMT and is a kind of a god tier technical analyst, always said that rotation is the lifeblood of a bull market. In bear markets, people take their money and then they run. They hide out in cash. They don't do anything interesting with it. In bull markets, people take their profits and they buy other stuff with it. So if someone made a lot in the chip space or made a lot in that, the massive run up in Meta and Apple and all of these names, maybe they're selling those and they're redistributing these into other sectors. And again, it's a shame for potentially long-term investors if this kind of rotation is going to continue, because it might mean the indexes move sideways for a while. But for us traders, it's going to be great. It just means that there may be a different sector in play every few weeks or every month or so for the foreseeable future.
You know what I love about, there we go. Come to me. What I love about that, Michael, is as a trader, you've been trading a long time, so you know this too. It gives us something in the summertime, which isn't always exciting. If we actually get a rotation, and I'm keyed in a couple of things. You mentioned energy, and we'll get to that in a second, but I'm interested in Walmart. Can it continue through the highs as the market comes out, as things come out of tech? Because it gives activity so that if the market's going sideways, it doesn't matter. There is always something to trade when you get that sector rotation. So it's not just good for the long-term investor, but it's also good for the trader. Now, I know you mentioned URA, so my question to you would be, you drew the trend line. I have the chart up, but I'm not going to draw your trend line for you, but along those lines. Oddly enough, this lower high happens to be 24.20, so I'm just going to throw that out there because it needs to be said. And then my question would be, when you're looking for a breakout, now you mentioned the Buffett bottom, this clearly has support, so the notion of swinging off the bottom, I think we all get that. I look at support and resistance, and I see that chart, and it's like buy the lows. But if you're thinking of a breakout trade here, you do have on the weekly a pretty significant downtrend that it's getting out of. How would you be structuring that? I'm not saying you're trading it next week, but how would you be structuring a trade off of this?
Well, so a play like uranium, commodities, for example, are much more known to trend and to trend really, really hard as opposed to individual stocks. And this is why there's a lot of very famous just straight trend followers who do nothing but if it breaks out of a multi-month high, you buy, and if it breaks down under multi-month low, you sell, and do pretty well doing that, is because of these trends. So another thing that was interesting to me on uranium is that we actually closed above the anchored VWAP from that swing high. So that's kind of where I'm looking at, and I'll draw this in. We're working on making these a little bit thicker just for the audience here, but just something like this. So it's closed above that. The last time it did this, it was a little bit of a fake out, but now it's kind of had that close above the anchored VWAP. So what I would do is, for me, I don't necessarily want to trade the commodity. I'm going to go look at, over the weekend, I'm going to look at individual names like CCJ is a Canadian uranium miner. There's a bunch of different individual stocks, because the hope is if I can find something with a really nice tight base or a high short float or some sort of catalyst that I think will propel it, and I'm right on what the commodity is going to do, then I think you get way more juice in the individual names. So that's why, for example, I don't own oil. I own Oxy, because I think when things get going, these individual names can have much more action than the overall name. So for me, what I would look at is that major AVWAP level from the highs, and if we get some sort of a flag or basing pattern or pullback or something to that, and that holds, then that will be my trigger just to see if we can get a push. And if I'm wrong, it's at URA is at 23 right now. If I'm wrong, absolute worst case, you got to be out under 20. And then if I'm right, maybe we retest 30. So then I look at that and I say, hey, it might take a while, but that's a really good risk reward. If I can get a handful of those trades with some decent size a month or a year, I'm going to be a happy camper.
Yeah, I love that outlook. It's where are you wrong? Is it simple? Is the reward to get there? It trends to the upside. You're good to go. Just a note on that CCJ, because I know you just brought that one up there, so it's worth mentioning. Sometimes the advantage too of trading an individual name is it might provide you with a way to play a sector that maybe it's a stronger trend, maybe it's a different style of trade, because that's been stair-stepping to the upside and breaking out, which this one speaks to my language as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge that's a great shout out specifically for CCJ there. So you mentioned Oxy, like there was a lot of people have been, the Buffett bottom, as you were sort of mentioning there. It seems like this is almost like it's almost too simple. Is this a case where do you just buy this every single time and hold a core position, and then you're covering when it gets to 75? Or is there any nuance that you'd put towards this trade as a swing trader? A lot of people would look at an Oxy and say, hey, that just makes it a great buy in the long term if Buffett likes it. And wouldn't be necessarily thinking, let's just reload over and over again and take this $15 move every single chance we can get. What are you doing with this when you see that? I don't even know what to call it, but it's better than just a Buffett bottom. It's also just one of the better support levels I've seen in any market.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, and I see you guys do it on the day trading side of things from the show all the time. Maybe you're bullish on a stock for a day, and you find your level, and you take a big position at that level, and then it moves in your favor a bit. You take a little bit off, and then maybe it comes back to that level. You add it back in, and your hope is that you're holding kind of a small little position. So you're buying a little bit here. I think when I mentioned it on the show, it was breaking out of this downtrend. So I have a little bit here. I sold a bit when it popped. I bought a bit more when it went down. I sold a little bit today. But yeah, that's the point, is that if I can generate a little bit of income and then hold this position, when I'm to the point where the money that I made is more than the position I have left, then that's something I can like tuck away into a retirement account or something like that and just say, hey, I own these Oxy shares and they're essentially free. And that's actually something that I've done with the regional banks. But for this, I actually did use the index just because I was a little bit scared of individual regional banks when it was playing around kind of this $40 area. So I did the same. I'm quickly becoming an anchored VWAP convert after working with Brian Shannon for so long. But every time it came back to this anchored VWAP that I'll draw in from the lows here, I bought a little bit, and if it would rally off, I sold a bit, and then I bought a little bit, and then I sold a bit. So now I have a little bit of KRE that essentially the trading profits, I guess you could say, have quote unquote paid for. So this is something that I'm going to hold on to, because if the regional banks are done exploding and we're going to go back to the highs before this kind of stuff happened, then I'm comfortable holding it. And if KRE goes to zero tomorrow, then it's not really a losing trade. So of course the position isn't very big anymore, but it's just the difference between day trading and swing trading, even though the style is close, is that I could hold this for years if I wanted to, sell some calls against it or something like that. But it is the same kind of philosophy you guys might have on the intraday basis. I'm just doing the same kind of thing with just longer term candles. It's the fractal nature of trading that I love so much.
And this is why we call you the NOS boss, of course, because I love that play on KRE. And we'll get you out of here on this. And thank you, as always, for coming here, Michael. When KRE breaks that $80 high from 2022, then all of us get to come visit you out in Halifax, and lobster dinner is on you. So I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying it's going to get to $80, but hey, it looks pretty juicy to me. And I love the fact that when you take the ETF, you take some of the risk out of the individual names. I don't think that gets said enough, especially when you're dealing with some of these volatile plays. But Michael, any plans for the weekend?
Well, I've got a lot of scanning to do because it was a big week, and I'll give you the results on those on Monday morning. Other than that, just going to go down to the lake with the kid, have a good time. I may be booking a trip up to see you guys. Who knows? Some people have noticed there's some cool stuff going on behind me that I'm going to talk about live on air with all you guys, but more on that soon, I think.
I know what that is, but I'm not going to spoil it. We look forward to having you, of course. As always, Michael Noss, Chartered Market Technician from Trade Ideas, Trader TV 20. Sign up for it. We use it here. He's the best. He's back on Monday. We can check out some of these calls. I said it like twice, but I'm going to say it one more time. When you're looking at that play for the regional banks, you know there's individual news. Everyone has a different quarter. Everyone has different deposit stories and the comeback. And maybe you can try to pick out one. But if you're not an expert and you're not reading the balance sheet and you see that setup, you just take the ETF for the trade. It is the easy way to play it. You have much less risk. You don't have to worry about earnings as much and all that other nonsense. And I love that we can always bring that to the viewers, a way to save them some time and maybe some frustration when you're looking for a trade.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, I had a little preview of what is behind him in his monitor there. So
of course
there may or may not be a new version coming of Trade Ideas. But yeah, he's going to come. We're going to talk about it on the show. Trader TV 20, guys, as always, get you 20% off. Neil, let's keep going. Yeah, we talked about Nvidia. As a big mover, obviously, to the downside today. I just saw Netflix as well, better part of 2%. Yeah, bye, Mr. Nas. I don't know if anyone heard that, but bye, Mr. Nas. Have a great weekend. We also saw Netflix, 2% to the downside today. I mean, in a relatively flat tape, obviously stands out a little bit weak as well.
Yeah, I want to kind of start with Nvidia because we didn't get into this, and Michael did a great point of pointing out that anchored VWAP from when you had that the break just today. And you can look at a lot of things here, but I just want to show you a lot of people have been chasing the move on Nvidia, but there's a lot of money that is probably going to wait to come into this on a dip. A lot of money's been on the sidelines in this AI move. And specifically for Nvidia, when you put out the higher time frame, when I see it pull back and make that first big weekly close down, why would we not get back to that previous big level from 2021 down at that 330? And you gotta think about this. And if I'm looking to dip buy Nvidia, where I think the obvious place for support to come in, I see that 330, and it's difficult for me not to say why not there. And I will personally, I like a stink bid down there on Nvidia. I'm going to throw one. I actually have a stink bid on Tesla. I'm going to like it for Nvidia if we drop another. At this point, it would be about 20%, maybe a little bit less than that. But you pull out that higher time frame. When you get a trend reversal like this, you don't want to fight it. Yeah. You want to think about where will the buying come in. And don't forget, we haven't even had their earnings yet. So if they have any kind of a disappointment, that's another reason to get there. They report on the 23rd.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to be looking to the outlook and the forward look on how things are shaping up with the AI side of things and the chips that are in the works and to come still. I mean, we had that story, Sharif and I were talking about it a little bit the other day about all the major Chinese tech names with monster orders already for this specific AI chip that Nvidia is going to come. So, I mean, we'll see. When they report, it's definitely been the leader as far as the chips are concerned. Let's touch on oil here. And from a standpoint of simply, it has been a very volatile month overall as far as oil is concerned. This is just USO, and I brought this up because if you were with us in the morning, you saw Mr. Nas was talking about this all week long, both on Monday and again this morning. This 63.50 ends up being a huge level for USO. If you're looking for a way to play oil, I mean, very easily, it's an ETF. Why not? Gives you very clear levels and is very tradable.
Yeah, you know what? And this is the thing. When you trade something, I agree with you 100% on USO. And we were just talking about not having to worry about. You want to simplify trades, right? So we can leave that chart up if you wanted to on USO, but. Sure. If you're just doing something technical, like I'm getting entry off support level, I'm holding it, this is the trend line I'm following, if you like anchor VWAP, it doesn't really matter what it might be. You don't want to have to worry about, but Chevron's canceling their dividend. They're never going to do that. They're not doing it. But you don't want to have to worry about that kind of news. That's what the ETF gives you. Now, all that being said, I have a chart up of Chevron because this is the vehicle outside of, I'm Canadian, so I have Enbridge. But outside of that, Chevron is the name that I own personally. And I look at where we're going here, and if we break that next leg up, and you already saw Oxy today, they had their own news, that's why they're a little bit stronger than the rest of the names in the group with the carbon capture. But if you actually make this breakout, and I've heard $100 oil coming back in on this bounce. You've seen a lot of that talk. I've seen people throw out bigger numbers than that. I won't name names or targets. I've heard 150 from people who are pretty smart with this. You look at where this is bouncing on the weekly, and there's all the reason in the world that you can have a rotation back into here for these to get back into the highs. Yeah. If there is a rotation coming out of tech, where is it going? People are making calls on gold. I like what energy is doing here. I do like something. I do like some of the consumer names like a Walmart, but this feels a lot safer. I love Chevron because they give the dividend as well, and the 150 is as good as any level. Look at the look at this. Like on the weekly chart, how are we just bouncing off 150 over and over and over again? And this usually takes you right back into the high. That's a good 20% move in here, and you can pick and choose.
And it's been the same old all year long, basically. Steve G, I see you. What's up? I get a chance to actually have a look at the chat for one time. Yeah, he's saying, what about nat gas? And we were talking about it a little bit to kick things off. It's the same story. Sharif is actually very bullish on nat gas going into the fall and into the winter. I can't believe we're even having that conversation in the middle of August, but apparently we are. Demand and obviously the weather. I mean, it's been, I don't know where everyone is, obviously, but here in Toronto and Canada, it's been an amazingly wet summer.
Yes.
And typically that leads, I was reading the other day, typically that leads to a wetter than normal and somewhat cold fall. So possibly nat gas upside to come. A couple things. I saw we're on Stock Blitz. If you're watching with Sean, he always likes to go through a number of different.
Oh, well, sure. You already did it.
A number of different names. Yes, we did. I saw some people talking about Tesla. I saw some people talking about Palantir. Why don't we touch on those, and then we'll get on to what we're looking forward to for the next week.
Yeah, I saw Tesla come in there first. I was actually just, you said the second you mentioned natural gas, the first thing I do is check out what my Tellurian's doing because I have a shot play on that. But look, you're talking about Tesla. Everyone knows it's in a bit of a pullback like the rest of the market. Like I want to focus on the weekly chart. If you're thinking about what we're doing next week, you want to have the higher time frame trend. Let's forget about today or yesterday. It's all about what's happening right now, and that's the rejection of the $300 level and the dip. And we have just, and I'm talking just, tested this pullback at 240, which was previous resistance. So you don't hold on to this next week. Every reason to expect that we get back down into this is like the two teens here. Like I've already said, I like this. If you're looking to buy dips in something for the long term, that's where I think starting in around that 220. And to me, it's just a little more of like a dollar cost average play. And then once I have what I want, you hold it forever. But as far as the trade goes, that means underneath 240, you've got 10% downside next week.
Yeah.
So the longer we hold underneath there, when you've got 10% potential move, Tesla's done that in a day before.
Yep.
So it's hard not to lean into the shorts underneath the 240 level. It doesn't mean it has to work.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we're going to be under 240, but it does mean if we're under 240, I'm thinking short, change my mind, and room to 220.
Yep.
That's what I see when I look at the weekly chart, and I would take some convincing to get me away from that, at least currently. That's what I see when it comes to Tesla.
Tesla is one of those stocks as well. When it's time to be long, you'll know it's time to be long.
Yeah.
It will plainly tell you and say, if you're not, you're crazy, and why not? A lot of people have been yelling and screaming about that all year long because what a year it's been for Tesla. So we'll have a look at that coming up next week. I wanted to touch on as well, retail names going to be in focus, obviously, with earnings to come. Home Depot, Walmart, TJX, there's a bunch of them coming next week. Not typically stocks we look at on a regular basis as far as intraday opportunities and day trading opportunities, but maybe just from an ETF or even you brought up Walmart there, let's maybe just touch on some of the retail strength that has been in the market here.
You know what? Actually, before we talk about Walmart, we talk about this as being things that we don't trade. So I'm going to point this one out because a couple of days ago, I have a weekly up of Lulu, but I'm going to change this Lulu here and give you a different look. Let's just sort of switch it up and throw up like a 15-minute on Lululemon. Because the other day, I tweeted out in the morning, and I know it's a stock I don't normally trade, and not that we usually do, but I was like, Lululemon has a ridiculous flat top break at 386. And it wasn't even earnings or anything like that, and this is what Lulu did. When Caterpillar had earnings, we gave a big speech about how it's not a stock we normally trade. I was like, this is the setup on Caterpillar. And then Max was like, you see what Caterpillar did? Didn't trade it. It was a great, crazy runner. Same thing happened on Starbucks. So when Walmart reports next week, what I don't want to hear is any of this. We'll probably say it anyways. Not a stock I normally trade. Don't know if there's going to be anything there. No, forget all that nonsense. If I see a trade in Walmart, this time I'm just going to bloody well take it because when it's earnings, that is the time to do it. And it is breaking out. This is a weekly chart. You're breaking into new highs. If there is any continuation of this move, why would you not want it? You can see retailers do 5 and 10% on the day that they do earnings. And I'm not talking about gapping it. I'm talking about an actual breakout trade that you can have.
Yeah.
We've seen it before. There is zero reason not to at least look for it next week. And earnings is the time to do it. We get Walmart next week. It's the 17th. And I'll be excited. It doesn't mean I have to trade it, but when you're breaking these tops like this, I like the continuation play.
Yeah, Lulu the 30th. So we got to wait until the end of the month for Lululemon. Obviously, XRT, the ETF. I was just noting, I had to refresh this chart because it looks very, very similar to that USO chart that we were looking at a little bit earlier. This is a weekly chart for the retail group, holding up remarkably well here as we head towards the latest earnings. So maybe some decision making to come as far as this group is concerned. Going into, what is it? Next week is the middle, essentially, of August, and then the final 2 weeks of August, typically for the market, a little bit slower. You know, volume dies down. A lot of people still on vacation. Anything else standing out for you as we head into the final half, I guess, of the month?
Well, boring. It'll be another earnings name. XPeng a little bit. Because, so you had the Chinese ADRs all move, you know, based on some comments and some actions and some comments that were interesting made from the administration. Biden, I kind of feel like he had some strong words, and you saw a bit of a pullback in these names. The EV names have already been in play. XPeng has been one of the more volatile names here. And I want to just, this is what happened today, a little bit of a pullback, or a little bit of a bounce off these levels. But if you pull up the daily on XPeng, it is more than a healthy dip going into earnings. This was running on that Volkswagen news. It got all the way up, touching $23 from 16 in a single week, and that was on top of it bouncing from mid-year from $10 to get past 20. So this has been making some serious moves, and then it's pulling right back into that parabolic breakout price at the absolute perfect time. It gives it room to run. A lot of times, I think if it has a strong enough beat and they like all the numbers, then you can bounce off a 13 to 15 area and be right back at 20 in a couple of days, because that's what these kind of names do. When they move, they really start flying, and this pullback is maybe giving you the juice. I'm not saying it gets back to the highs, but I think it can at least give you the juice at 20. First things first, they've got to deliver. If they do, I think this is the one that you want to be trading. Usually it's NEO, but not next week. Next week it's XPeng for me.
And the key, you know, the key here, obviously, there's still going to be opportunities. There's still going to be things to look at. We just have to shift our focus a little bit as we head towards September. Again, the two big economic events going to be September 13th and then the 19th and the 20th. Mr. Roberts, I think it's officially the weekend. What do you say?
Well, I think it is definitely the weekend. I am looking forward to a little bit of baseball. My daughter has her final game tomorrow, which means I will be missing them honoring Jose Bautista.
I read that today. He's going to sign a one-day contract?
Yep. Jose Bautista signing a one-day contract with the Blue Jays so he can retire a J.
Good for him.
They're putting him on the Ring of Honor tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it's my daughter's last game of the season. It's like all the teams play. It's the same set of diamonds. So it's a great moment at the Jays game. We can go to Jays games all the time.
Yeah.
I will be there, and I will not be sad one bit. So
of course.
We get a chance.
I'm sure he'll be there, right?
Oh, I mean, it'll be pretty amazing. We'll probably go to the game on Sunday, and hopefully they'll do something for him there as well. I mean, Bautista's a legend for the Jays. The bat flip.
In this city, for sure.
The weekend for you, what are you doing?
Not a heck of a lot. Sticking around the city. Maybe I'll go check out the Jays game on Saturday.
You should check out the Jays game.
Everyone have a happy and safe and enjoyable, relaxing long weekend. We're back on Monday. I think we did okay. Sean is back on Monday.
I think we did
okay.
I like it. It's a lot of fun. It's more laid back. We can talk a little bit about it. Nicole Harris saying, AMC, my calls. Go, go, go. AMC apparently making some power moves.
Yeah, I saw that. Down 20% after hours here.
So I'm going to change. Remember, XPeng, that's going to be the trade. XPeng will get traded next week. Based on what's happening on AMC right now, I don't know what direction it's going to be, but when it's moving, AMC is just a name you got to be on when it's making some move, up or down, around town, left or right. As long as it's making moves, we want to trade it. So good luck to all of you out there, whether you own AMC shares or not, making a bit of move to the downside. A lot of fun. Like you said, Sean is back next week. Do you have the headline if you want to
Yeah,
just quickly give it?
this is from that Charles Gasparino, Fox reporter. AMC revised stock conversion plan approved by the court. AMC Entertainment sinks 27% after conversion proposal approved. So if you remember, when they denied it the first time, they refiled with some changes, I guess, to it. So that has, it would appear anyways, been approved. So that makes sense. AMC down big time.
Yeah, and then APE will be going up in that situation as they converge together.
We'll talk Monday. Have a wonderful weekend.
Take care, everybody.